Holy Spirit, this morning may you continue the work of making us into a dwelling place. Each of us individually, so that you may be a light within us. And also us together as we gather here this morning. That we would be a place where you can be found. Amen. Easter sermons are a challenge. Especially last year. You may recall that last year Easter fell on April Fool's Day. That was really hard to resist. I still think about all the crazy things I would want to do. And I restrained myself. And I think I held myself pretty much together. That was definitely the hardest one maybe I had so far. But Easter sermons are a challenge. They simply are. I can't get past it. On the one hand, this is just another Sunday. Right? In a week, I'm going to be back up here again, hopefully with something else worthwhile to say. We'll see. Stay tuned. But Sunday's return is relentless. No matter what happens on Sunday, eventually Monday comes and it all, for me, starts again. And I start working toward the next Sunday. There's no stalling it. There's no postponing it. That's just how it is. And I'm sure any job has a rhythm like that. Maybe a weekly rhythm, maybe longer, I don't know. So in a way, it's just another Sunday. Just another sermon. One of probably 48 that I'll preach this year. On the other hand, Easter is like the reason there are Christians. Without Easter, there probably wouldn't be any Christians at all. Without Easter, Maundy Thursday is not that interesting. Good Friday is just depressing nonsense. Pentecost wouldn't make any sense to anyone. Without Easter, even Christmas isn't that big a deal. Like, why is this child important? What's going to happen? What's his story? Without Easter, we don't have that much of a story. Jesus would just be another historical figure, relatively easy to forget. Maybe some scraps of text would remember him, but certainly without Easter, there would be no New Testament. There would just be one. So it feels like an Easter sermon has to be about everything. And of course, that is a recipe for failure. Then again, maybe a little bit is enough. In our reading from Isaiah this morning, we see through the prophet God's vision for creation. God is going to create a new heaven and a new earth and a new Jerusalem. This is the culmination of God's plan and God's work in the world and God's calling of all the people God calls, has called, will call. This is that culmination. And as some of you know from previous sermons, I find this really interesting. That when we get to this prophetic culmination of God's purposes in the world, what we get is a vision that's pretty easy to understand. Like it exists on terms that are easy for us to comprehend. When we look at this new heaven and new earth, what are the terms here? What is it about? Well, people will be delighted and they will experience joy. People will live long lives and they'll be happy for those lives. There won't be any weeping or sorrow or pain. People will build houses and then be able to live in those houses. People will plant vineyards and be able to eat the fruit of their vineyards. They won't be forced to work and to build for someone else to live. They won't have to plant food that someone else is going to eat. They won't have to bear children for calamity and not have any hope for their children's future. culminating in this place where no one hurts or destroys anyone else ever again. There's nothing like mystical or supernatural or hard to understand here. It's almost a pedestrian vision, like just build houses and live in them, plant crops and eat them, live a long time and be happy, have children who have hope for the future. Nobody's hurting or killing each other. And even then, given this straightforward, easy to understand, comprehensible vision of the new heaven and the new earth, we still might look at these things as impossible. Like take, for example, I read everyone being able to build a house and then live in it. In our terms, we might understand that as ending homelessness. The idea that everyone should have a place to live. And ending homelessness sounds like insurmountable. It sounds overwhelming. How do we even start to do that? Or take the idea of being able to plant vineyards and eat their fruit and not plant food for another person to eat, implying that you go hungry. Like, where's your food going to come from if all your work is to feed others? Like ending hunger. Like that sounds like one of those things that, like the UN sets a goal, this is the decade for ending hunger, and you're kind of like, sure, yeah, I mean, the effort in that direction is good, but that seems impossible. You can't really achieve that. Until you look at it. I have a couple of good examples that are interesting. The first example is of ending homelessness. Did you guys know that the state of Utah, about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago now, decided they were going to end homelessness throughout the entire state of Utah? And did you know that they have almost succeeded? That 91% of the people who were homeless when they began this task now have places to live. And that they're approaching 100%. They're just working on finding the people who are very difficult to keep in housing, to get them into housing. They said they were going to end homelessness, and then 10 years later, they're almost done. One of the interesting things they've found in Utah is that it's actually cheaper to give someone a place to live than to force them to remain homeless. It actually costs less. Like they're saving money on social services, on emergency room visits, on all kinds of things, just by giving people who are homeless a place to live. Turns out ending homelessness is actually simple. You give people places to live. Very easy. Another example, and my pronunciation here is probably off. Lucinda can tell me after the service if it was. There's a city in Brazil called Belo Horizonte. Okay. That place. In 1993, this city said that having enough food is now a human right. For citizens of our city, everyone in this city has a right to enough food. Now, they had a hunger rate at that time of about 1 out of every 5 or 1 out of every 6 people was going hungry, lacking food on a regular basis. For context, 1 out of every children in the United States does not have enough food on a regular basis. So just as a reminder, we're around the same situation they were in. At this point, the city of beautiful has nearly ended hunger. When people who work on the programs that are ending hunger there are interviewed, what they say, the shocking thing about it is that it's so simple. And the cost of ending hunger in this entire city, in what was in 1993 certainly a developing nation, the cost of ending hunger throughout the city has been 2% of the city's annual budget. 2%. And they ended hunger. A little bit can be enough. even when our goal is achieving the prophetic vision of God's new creation in the world, a little bit can be enough. What we lack are not the resources. What we lack is the will and the vision. On Easter, in the events leading up to Easter, everything that could go wrong went wrong. Nothing on the way to Easter went the way it was supposed to from pretty much anyone's point of view. Jesus, as you may have heard, raised Lazarus from the dead. And as a result, the Sanhedrin decided, they're like the Supreme Court, the Sanhedrin decided that they needed to kill Lazarus. They were offended that he was raised from the dead. They were upset that Jesus had done this. They decided they needed to kill him. He needed to stay dead. And then they decided, you know what? This Jesus guy is a huge problem too. And so the Sanhedrin met not long before Easter and decided they needed to kill Jesus as well. They couldn't deal with him any longer. They needed him dead. The problem is, they couldn't do it. They needed Pontius Pilate to kill him. Because the Jews had their own courts, but only for religious matters. And there's no way the Roman Empire was going to let some little ethnic group choose when to execute people. That was something only Rome did. And so where does Jesus go for Passover? He goes where everyone goes, to Jerusalem, where all the people who want to kill him are also gathered together in the center of their power, where he's going to have all this attention focused on him. It'll be impossible to hide. Now, Jerusalem in Passover grew from a city of 10,000 people, or about 2/3 of a Phoenixville, to a city of 100,000 people. Because everyone came in for Passover. People who were big fans of Jesus, people who hated him and wanted to kill him, all crammed together in this city for the holy days. And when Jesus arrives in Jerusalem, where does he go? He goes to the temple. The temple courtyard, which is kind of like Wall Street for Jerusalem. This is where more money changed hands in the temple courtyard than anywhere else in the city. In fact, more money might change hands over Passover than the rest of the year. Because people would be out in the country, they would sell their lamb or their sheep or their ram, and they would take the money into Jerusalem and they would buy a sacrifice to make on Passover. Usually, you'd sell like a lamb, you'd come into the city, you'd go before the dove, maybe half a dove. There was a big markup in Jerusalem. But it was much easier than 100,000 people all bringing their livestock with them into the city. This is the way it worked. And this is where all of the temple's money came from. Their treasury had one source. This was basically it. So Jesus goes to the temple, and what does he do? He fashions a whip of cords, he flogs the money changers, scourges them out of the place, and then flips over all the tables, scattering this tremendous wealth all over the floor. You can imagine the chaos. Like, we're pretty polite people, but if it started raining $100 bills in here right now, it would get chaotic pretty quick. So coins are rattling around on the ground, and people are screaming and scrabbling for them. And in the midst of this, Jesus says, this is supposed to be a house of prayer for all people. He's implying that you shouldn't be charging people any money at all. That the center of the economy of Jerusalem should be done away with. Not the message anyone wanted to hear. A couple days later, Jesus has his last meal with his disciples. It's a Passover meal. He tries to give them the new commandment that they will love one another. He washes their feet. He gives them many teachings, most of which they do not absorb. And then he goes on to the Garden of Gethsemane to spend time in prayer, has a panic attack, and then is arrested by the temple. One of his followers, Peter, not even understanding the basic messages he's been hearing, takes a sword, chops off the guy's ear. Jesus has to heal the guy and then be arrested by the same guy. He's taken off in chains. At this point, Jesus is passed around. from Caiaphas, his father Annas, Pontius Pilate. They hand him around. There are 6 different moments he has in trials, between which he's beaten and spat upon and mocked and scourged and flogged. Finally, they decide, we're going to kill him. Pontius Pilate will crucify him, which is what the temple authorities want. So they stick a crown of thorns on his head and send him on his way to Golgotha. He doesn't even have the strength to carry the crossbeam for his cross. They have to get another person to carry it for him. He's been beaten so badly all night. He's marched up to Golgotha, hung on a cross, mocked by other people who are on crosses themselves being killed. They have the time and the breath to mock Jesus, mocked by crowds around him. The only people nearby are maybe his brother, an unnamed disciple, his mom, a couple other female followers he had. That's it. He says his 7 last words, as we talked about on Good Friday, and then dies. That's it. That seems to be the end of the story. The violent overthrow of the Roman Empire that most people wanted to see certainly never happened. The nonviolent revolution, the nonviolent resistance to the Roman Empire that Jesus taught about, that never got started. The kingdom of God that Jesus said was coming near, it was almost here, you would see it in your lifetime, seemed broken. It was done. His followers scattered and hid. Everyone went home. On Easter morning, a few of the women got up early, and they got some spices and oil together to prepare his body, because they hadn't had a chance to do this yet. And they went to his tomb, prepared to anoint and embalm a broken, dead body of who was once their rabbi. When they get to the tomb, you know what happens. They find that the tomb is empty. They get there, and it's empty. They brought very little with them. They didn't even bring the right stuff. They brought materials to honor a corpse. And they get to the empty tomb, and there's no one there. And then they're met by these men, probably angels, who tell them, why do you look for the living among the dead? Jesus is gone. He's gone ahead of you out into the world. Weren't you listening? Didn't you know? They didn't even understand what they were here to find. Everything leading up to Easter that could possibly have gone wrong went wrong. Every single person in this story failed. The temple authorities failed to understand Jesus' significance. Pontius Pilate failed to do his duty and execute even a semblance of justice. The crowds failed to understand who to support. His disciples failed to stick up for him when it really came down to it. Peter failed to understand the point of the whole thing, apparently. His female followers failed to learn his teachings and to know what to expect. And yet after all this, after everyone has failed, some spectacularly, still, the tomb stands empty. Still, Easter comes. No one had enough to do this. If everyone had done everything right, it wouldn't have been enough. Everyone did everything wrong. But the women brought embalming oils for a corpse. And Peter brought and a few other disciples scurried out of their hiding place to go look in the tomb. And even that little bit was enough. Because they found that the tomb was empty and that Easter had come. So this morning, if all we can bring, if all we have with us to give is just a little bit, even a little bit of the wrong things, we will still find that the tomb is empty. We will still find that was enough. On that